Hello there, everybody. Hope everybody is well. If everyone can hear me, just type your favorite currency pair into the chat. Been having some mic issues, so hopefully you all can hear me. Loud and clear. Awesome. Awesome. Hi, Vincent. Hi, CG. GU. Yeah, we're going to take a look at pound US dollar as well. Give me a minute or so, just working on something. Good afternoon, Harmeet. Hi, Royston. Welcome to the live stream. If everyone could give it a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate that. I want to try and get the likes up. I'm going to try and bring some new little ideas into the live streams. I'm working on doing a little bit of a spinning wheel analysis. What we can do. So it'll kind of pick the pair that we want to look for. So I want to be looking at markets that you guys want to be looking at as well. So if you could send your suggestions into the chat, let me know. We're going to go over multiple pairs as usual. We're going to go over GU. CG asked for. I was going to take a look at gold. Obviously, gold had a really aggressive move to the downside, which I actually talked about in the VIP trading room. If you are available in a Blueberry Markets client, you'll be able to get access to this. And I was talking about the potential for price to break lower here on gold. We had lots of volume to the downside here, which for me is an area where I feel like the market could go and target. And I spoke about this here. I basically said that the price is interesting. We're forming this triangle pattern. Now, whenever you see these kind of triangle patterns at levels of resistance, you know, what does it tell me? Well, it tells me that poor lows are being created. And what I mean by poor lows is you can see that we've got multiple tests of this low, but we're not really seeing any aggressive buying coming from it. Okay. So an example of a good low, like here and here, the market doesn't really go back to test that levels. And when they do, it's for a very short period of time before continuing to sort of aggressively move higher, right? Whereas a poor low is when you've got multiple tests of that zone. Okay. Now, obviously, it doesn't mean that price is going to fall through. You know, it doesn't work 100% of the time. Nothing is 100% in the markets, but it just gives you an idea of what could potentially happen. You can say I actually put two alternatives on here because I did feel that if price was to breach this trend line resistance, the counter trend line, then that could obviously lead to a bit more of a bullish outlook. But I felt that we had lots of volume down towards these levels here, which I'll show you on the volume profile charts in a moment. But look at that move that came from that. Obviously, lots of stops below these lows in here, which triggered very aggressive selling on gold. And that has continued down. So we'll go take a look at gold in a little bit as well, just to kind of give us an overview of what's going on in that market now. But just to let you know, there is other available markets to trade if you are a Blueberry Markets client, and numerous analysis that you can look at as well. So I'm on Euro US dollar here. Let's go down to cable. Just make sure this is the cable chart. Yeah, there we go. So we're on pound US dollar. Just make that full screen again. Yeah, cable really continuing that move to the upside. We've had some data today. We obviously had the PMIs out and services, manufacturing. Usually the UK favours more on the services side of things, and services did come in a little bit lower than expected. So came in at 52.9 rather than the 54.7, which was expected, but still above that 50 level, which still shows expansion. So we've seen that kind of continuation in pound US dollar. Obviously yesterday we had a very sort of aggressive move higher as well that was kind of overturned throughout the day. But really speaking, cable is still bullish. We're above the daily 50 moving average here. The market is still moving away from that at this moment in time, and we've got key levels above this zone which could be targets for those buyers at the moment. We've got that 128 handle which was formed back on the 21st of March, where you can see we had very aggressive selling coming in. So it looks like the market's going to go and target those areas. We've got that 128 there, and if we breach that, we've got the sort of the 128.50s, where we saw obviously the overall sell-off in price, which came back in March as well. So I'm still quite favouring this upside move here in the market for cable. Looking at the volume profile, though, don't really have too much to work with right now. If I actually just turn this off for a second, I'm just going to grab a fixed volume profile tool so it just looks a little cleaner. And just kind of looking at yesterday's price action, you can see that we're obviously very range bound. The market had quite a significant swing, and the majority of the value or the volume was built sort of between these kind of two areas here, which is where price is kind of trading now, around about that one spot 27.34 and down towards the one spot 27.10. So usually when the market opens up within a previous day's value area, it can stay within that. That's what we're kind of seeing here. The market just bouncing between value area low, value area high at this current moment in time. So I think if we want to be long side on cable at the moment, I would want to see a breaches above these highs. Shows me that there is intent to see moves higher, and that we can maybe look for something like that, some kind of continuation move. Ideally as well, you know, if we do get another rejection here and price does come back down towards the 127.10, again, I see that as being good value for opportunities to the upside still. So if we can hold above 127.10, I still kind of favor that upside on cable. And obviously this would give us a better risk reward ratio, because we would be able to sort of have longs in and around that level and then still kind of target those kind of inside highs through here. And we don't really have that at the moment. So obviously the more kind of interesting area for me right now is a break and retest. The only thing is obviously our risk reward becomes a little bit kind of swallowed up. Essentially, we have less risk reward to play with at that point in time. Any questions so far, guys, about GU? Oh, good. I think as long as we kind of stay on the positive side of this, in terms of we're above the 50, prices are still pretty bullish here. Still happy to look for kind of long ideas on cable so far. But I do like pound elsewhere. You know, I think we can go take a look at pound yen. Pound yen has been on my list as well. Pound, a very strong currency at the moment. And I had a comment on one of the currency strength meters, right? So basically saying to kind of So the way the currency strength meter works at the moment, it's worked off of trend. Okay, so basically what happens is that we have this scoring system here, and then we take a look at the weekly change within the currencies, right? And the way I base it at the moment is that if price makes a higher high, so let's say that that is euro dollar, okay, euro versus the dollar. If it's in an upward trend, okay, like this, making a higher high and higher lows, I would score the euro a 1 and the US dollar a 0. Okay, that's the way I like to do it. And if it was going the opposite way like this and it's making lower lows and lower highs, okay, I like to score, let's say, euro dollar again. I like to score it 0 to euro, 1 to the US dollar. Okay, and that's how the currency strength meter is built, and it's all built off of daily time frames. But I had a comment on one of the videos basically saying, why can't we use the 50 moving average to try and negate the sort of I guess our opinions on whether the market is making higher highs or higher lows or not. And I thought that might be a good idea, so I thought I'd go and try and explore that as well. So instead, if price is above the 50 MA, let me just put that in a different color. Let's say this pink line is the 50 MA, okay? And I'm still using daily charts for this, 50 MA. I'm going to give it the same score instead. And I'm going to see how the outcome comes out with the currency strength meter. So this is the first week of it. So basically what it was telling me to look at were these currency pairs in here this week for opportunities, okay? And the majority of them were long, so I just put longs in here. But I thought it was a really interesting concept to try and take a look at. So I think if you are building your own currency strength meter by the one that I've done various videos on it as well, and live streams as well. You can go back and take a look at those. But if you are struggling to figure out, let's say, the trend in the market, we can try and use this simple filter. So if it's above the 50 MA, it's going to be a positive score. And then obviously the only time we're really going to struggle is if price is kind of range bound. But really speaking, the average should be kind of through price like that. So we still have to use a little bit of discretion. And if the market is in a range bound area, then we're going to have to try and kind of figure out how to call a range. I haven't sort of done that yet. I've just kind of gone with the very simple, is it above, is it below? And this is what the score was. So I ended up having a very strong pound for this week, a very strong New Zealand dollar, a very weak Japanese yen, a very weak Swiss franc, and a very weak CAD. And these were the markets that we were going to look at. So I'm going to take a look at these today as well. And that's why I'm bringing up pound yen here, because pound yen, it was saying that we should be bullish. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to see how far price moves on the week from the Monday. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. If you want me to kind of go into this more detail as well, I can do a little piece on that. But essentially, if I go to pound yen here, I did mark out a few little areas, okay? So this is pound yen, obviously above that 50 moving average. We've been above the 50 moving average for a very long period of time. You know, I'm trying to add a little stochastic filter in there as well, just to kind of, again, we're trying to avoid going long on pullbacks. But again, we can use our price action knowledge to understand when the market is in a phase 2 pullback. But essentially, this week we've been very bullish. You know, at the start of the week, we opened up around about 197.65, and price so far is up 200 pips on the week. Okay, and I think that could be something positive to potentially build on. So what I did then was I come on to the 30-minute time frame and just applying our swing trading strategy for this so far. I can see that there's been multiple opportunities throughout this week. Okay, so the first one, obviously what we would be looking for from a swing trading perspective is for price to come back to that 50 MA and close back above it, keeping it very, very simple. So you can see here on Monday, we had a very nice retest of the 50 MA, close back above. And then again on Tuesday, we had a break below the 50 MA, close back above. And then today we had a very similar thing. Obviously, that's red folder news, so I'd probably try and avoid the red folder data. But then you've got that little move here that could have happened recently when price came back into those swing lows. So I actually think, you know, so far, looking at across the currency pairs, not all of them have worked. I'll go show you one that hasn't worked in a minute. But pound yen definitely was one of those that was suggesting that we continue to stay long with regards to the adapted currency strength meter. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on that, guys. Let me know if you feel like that could be useful for you. If so, I can try and keep up with sort of two versions of the currency strength meter. Because then if I compared it to what it was looking at really for us this week, it did say that New Zealand dollar was strong. It said pound was strong. It says the yen and CAD and Swiss were weak as well. So my currency strength meter said very similar things. It didn't quite score them as strong or as weak. So for my yen, I've got a -3 rather than a -6 from the 50 MA. And I've got a pound that was +2, not +7, I think it was, from the +7 from the 50 MA. And I don't know whether we can use this as a tool for reversals either. Not quite sure how we do that, because the reversals are going to come in and we're still going to see it above a 50 MA, because what is a 50 MA? It's just averaging. It's a line that averages the closes of the last 50 candles, whatever time frame you're on. So price is still king. It is developed from that, but I just thought it was a very interesting concept that somebody brought to my attention. So I thought I'd explore it to see if it made any difference. And obviously if it does, then you guys are obviously going to can be able to use that as well. But pound yen, I like the idea of longs. I like the idea of being a buyer of pound yen, especially down towards these kind of recently formed swing lows. So I do quite like the idea of that. I think if we can breach the 199.70 handle, you know, the next kind of area of interest for me is all the way back up in that 200.5, you know, that area where we saw that potential intervention back at the end of April. So keep an eye on your pound yen. Quite like pound yen longs at the moment. Sorry, send a message here, Royston. Interesting new view on dollar Mexican peso related to the Fed and fundamental news. So yeah, it probably will have an impact. Anything dollar based and dollar news will definitely have an impact on dollar peso. I haven't actually looked at dollar peso for a very long time. At one point, it was one of my favorite charts, just because the carry trade here is so good, right? And obviously you want to be a seller of the Mexican peso, because let me just go on to, you want to buy the currency that has a higher interest rate. Let me just see if I can find it. America, Mexico, interest rate. Yeah, interest rate is 11%. So you want to be a seller of this market. So the carry trade here is actually very, very good right now. You know, the dollar is actually a very weak currency. So it actually makes sensible plays here for that dollar mex downside, because this is where a lot of, maybe even a lot of institutions will be getting a lot of value, especially on the carry trade. You know, the dollar is going to continue weaker, which we do feel like that is the case. If we head over to the dollar index at the moment, we're still pursuing lower prices here. We've still got the lower lows, lower highs, you know, and what we did last week was Tuesday, we looked at the US 10-year bond yields and the correlation between the US 10-year and the US dollar index. And we've got that sort of lower high forming here as well. Now, what would be interesting to me is we breach to the downside here. I think if 10 years breach below 4.35%, then I think the dollar is really going to be impacted by that. The dollar is going to be dragged lower, and that in turn will provide you with some opportunities on the US dollar. And if we go back to dollar peso, there's potential for this downside to continue, with potentials for it to come down into sort of that 16.3 area. So I actually don't mind this idea, Royston, to be honest. I like the idea of being short this market. I mean, as long as price stays below that 50, you know, maybe even stays below this trend line resistance as well, you know, that to me could be a good sign of further downside. If we look at the 30-minute time frame here, you know, we are kind of starting to sort of semi-break down. Let's go to a 4-hour time frame on the right-hand side. Let's have a little look at the 4-hour. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's a lot of buying going on here at the minute, but I would be sort of very kind of cautious over this zone. You know, I think if you're going to look for your shorts, I want to be short below this area. So maybe sell stops below that swing low there to see if it can really kind of push onto the downside. Like I said, targets down towards that 16.3 area looks pretty good to me. Like early signs that price is going to be pushing back higher is a break of this trend line resistance. We can see it's very clear. We've had our anchor formation. You know, this is our sort of first touch of that level. So if we can kind of hold there, you know, it'd be nice actually if we get a daily inside candle here. I'd look to see if price can close below the inside candle then the next day, and that could then trigger a bit of a move. We do have some data coming up in the US in a little bit. We've got the flash manufacturing PMI and flash services PMIs, so that may cause a little bit of a move here. But I like to look at the sort of 4-hour time frame and say to myself, if price doesn't really break trend, then you know we should be continuing to look for shorts. And it doesn't technically break trend until that kind of swing high there. You know, if the market doesn't break this high and holds this high, then it could continue lower. So maybe news comes out, we might get a spike. If we close below, then maybe that could be a catalyst as well. So maybe that's something to consider there. But I haven't traded this for a while, Royston, to be fair. Yeah, heard it from you, especially about the bearish swaps value. Yep. Very good on the swaps. Very good on the swaps. You don't really want to be buying this currency pair ever. You only really want to be shorting it. And I mean, look at that. Definitely found some value on the carry shorts there the market has. But you know, be a little bit cautious. We've had a bit of a rally up recently, and we're kind of just squeezing back down slightly. So I would be a little bit cautious of that pop higher. Does inside daily candle indicate indecision? Yeah, exactly that. It indicates, you know, either indecision or accumulation. If you look at a inside candle on a lower time frame, it usually shows a consolidation being built, or what I would class as a balanced day. And balanced days can lead to larger breakouts, especially across your commodities. Gold is really good for that. If you are on gold and you trade gold quite often, look for a really small daily candlestick on gold, because quite often you can see some explosive moves from that. Morning, right guy. Hope you're doing well. Let's go take a little look at the NASDAQ. Obviously, we've had, let's actually see if we can get NVIDIA up. We had NVIDIA earnings come out at the market close yesterday. Obviously, this is going to open at 2:30. So expecting some kind of potential rally here, because we beat estimates. You can actually see, sorry, pre-market is already trading up at the sort of $1,000 level, and that is a sort of jump of 6.5% there. And NVIDIA at the moment is the market, or the stock that is really carrying the NASDAQ. So if you are a trader of the NASDAQ, you got to really keep an eye on NVIDIA at the moment. And you can see that we almost had the market almost kind of buying that in preparation of the higher earnings here. So this was when the announcement was made on NVIDIA. Obviously, NVIDIA's market was closed at that point, but the NASDAQ was still technically trading. and you have this move higher here. So it'd be interesting to see how the Nasdaq performs today. Obviously, we've broken into all-time highs again. The market is still continuing to trade higher here, and it's where's the Nasdaq going to stop now? You know, we were looking at sort of longs down towards that 17K level, and it's kind of where do you predict price going? I think the only thing we can do to try and predict price is maybe look at a fib extension tool. Maybe let's have a little look. Let's see where the 1618. 127.2 is kind of resting at the moment. And we pop the 50% back on there. 38.2618. Maybe 127 extension. So that kind of brings us in around about that sort of 19.5K area, maybe just below that. So that's definitely interesting, right? And it is where do you see a top in a market? It's very difficult to say. What areas do you like to mark out as possible areas of reversal, whole numbers, supply and demand? Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I like to use a combination of things. My favorite tool is obviously volume profile. That is my sort of favorite tool, and market profile. If you have availabilities to use those, because that just shows you where the market has been trading. And then a lot of the times I like to use highs and lows. You know, I always think that highs and lows are really good areas to watch out for. Very evidently, you know, the market is bought up from lows and sold off from highs. So if you get to a high point and you can see sellers coming back in, then I feel like that's always a good area to try and be involved with the market. And then looking at previous lows as well. It doesn't work all the time, obviously, you know, nothing does, but I do think that there are strong levels when it comes to trades in, especially highs and lows. I always kind of try and, yeah, even if the market is in an upward trend like this, I always try and mark out the lows to see if there's any kind of opportunities around those. And, you know, a lot of the times the market can come back into them and continue to drive higher, like that example there on the Nasdaq. Higher time levels, the higher the time frame you go, the bigger impact that low could be or that high could be. Because while price discovery is always hard at times for traders, majority try to fade it and end up getting eaten up. Yeah, 100%. You know, it's very difficult to know when a market is going to move lower, but I think in our nature, we see something that's at a high price, so we feel like it's a good thing to sell. You know, I really, really like mean reversion trading. So, you know, I'm watching this now, and I'm in my nature, I'm like, I like the idea of fading that move, but I've learned a very, very long time ago that you do not want to be on the short side of stocks very often. Vincent, your take on dollar CAD? Yeah, I'll go through that in a second. Hi, just for nothing. Hope you're doing well. Let's go on to US dollar CAD then. Now, I still feel like dollar CAD, I still like the idea of being short. I really do like the idea of being short. I was looking at the volume profile here. I was actually looking at oil again yesterday. Oil was still kind of driving lower. It has kind of spiked back up today. Again, where is it spiking up from? You know, swing lows. You know, the market's coming in to this swing low. It's been evident that buyers have been here in the past. You know, that's a low risk area for me for the price to continue higher, because if you're a seller from here, that's where you want to target. So you've got the idea of sellers coming out at that point, but also buyers potentially getting in. So that's why I quite like using highs and lows as well in terms of buyers and sellers coming into the market. But I feel if we fail below $77, so let's say these buyers here give up and price breaches $77, then I think dollar CAD prices are also going to be dragged down with that. So I'm still on the side of potentially looking for downside moves here on dollar CAD right now. Obviously, the daily chart is not reflecting that for me, so I'm not really going to do too much about it right now. And one place that we were kind of looking at the other day was this volume area up here towards that 137 handle, and I was kind of looking at whether price would maybe reject this. At the moment, we're not really seeing a huge rejection. Obviously, this is a 4-hour time frame right now, so we are seeing quite a bit of bearishness out of this market. But I would be looking at this and saying to myself, you know, that's obviously evident that sellers have come in here. If price rediscovers that high, do we get selling pressure again? And if we do, can we look to sell that? My bias is still more on the short side. And again, the reason being is we've got a very similar pattern that's forming here that formed on gold, right? Where I talked about poor lows being formed. So you've got a low here, low here, low here. What do you notice about the buying in this area? It's not been that aggressive. Obviously, we did hear that was data, but every time we've kind of rallied so far, price has been pushed back down, and we're getting lower highs, lower lows. And this is very similar to that kind of gold price action that we had. So I'm still on the sort of side of potentially seeing some downside here. And especially if we breach 136, I expect continuations, basically because look at all these lows in here. Look at all the volume that we got down in this area. Lots of volume being built up, especially around that sort of 135 handle. So I quite like the idea of price going to test that, to be honest. But, you know, I could be wrong, and I'm going to be wrong if price breaches 137. I think, you know, if price, that's where I would say the idea is invalidated at that point. If we breach 137, I think we could probably head in a bit higher. Just nothing. What is the future trend on gold, long or short? Yeah, like let's go check out gold then, because I did a little post on it yesterday in the VIP trading room, and I like the idea of being a seller of gold below the swing lows in here. And let me just get rid of these. Basically, what I looked at was these lows. And then if I put on volume profile, again, I know it's not available to everybody, but just so I can show you here. This is what I mean by there was lots of volume that had been untested below these areas. So let me just take these off as well. Just full screen it. So at this moment in time yesterday, I'm just going to put it to the right-hand side of the screen. This is what I mean by untested volume. And when I look at untested volume, I look more at the point of controls rather than the value area highs and lows, because we had 1, 2, 3, 4 point of controls that haven't been tested. And what are point of controls? They are the most volume traded levels at that point, okay, and that price level. So it tells me that at this point there was very strong buying coming in because price exploded higher. At this point here, very strong buying came in, price exploded higher. Very strong buying came in, price exploded higher. So there's a lot of buying volume down in here, okay? And sometimes the markets can go back to those points, okay? And that's what I thought that maybe we could target within this move. I know I talk a lot about consolidations, and if I look at this daily chart here, here's a consolidation that the market broke out of. What are consolidations? They are large areas of volume, so buyers and sellers are agreeing with the price at that point, but then it becomes a one-sided story, and then the market can go into a directional move. The market can sometimes come back to these points and sometimes even break through it, move lower, or retest that volume. If buyers are still there at that point, we can see another potential upside move. So that's what I thought that we could potentially target here. One thing that also kind of drew my attention was, and I know not a lot of people like using indicators, but I think visually they can help us. So that day here on the stochastic, we did start to get a little bit of a crossover in that overbought kind of territory. And we also had 2 closes below the high. that formed back on the 12th of April. So that showed me that maybe buyers weren't going to get back involved with the market here. You know, a lot of selling taking place at that point, and then obviously we've just gone and took a load of volume. Now, long term, I think gold is definitely one to watch for higher prices. You know, Commitment of Trader reports data is showing us that the commercials aren't really selling at levels of extreme levels, which you would expect with the price to be this high. They would be selling quite aggressively, but we haven't seen that yet. Whether that will be reflected in next week's cut reports, we'll have to wait and see. But to me right now, I feel like maybe this is just profit taking at the moment, and that we're probably going to see some further upside in price. Where would that be? You know, maybe if price comes back to test this volume area down through here, then maybe that will be the point where price continues to go again. But it's like we talked about before. If you are buying gold, I would only look to target the previous swing high. I wouldn't look to go anywhere else from that. I wouldn't try to be looking for a specific number. You know, you may have heard something like price of gold going to $12,000, whatever. Then you think, oh, I'm just going to hold this long term. You know, as in trading, you don't want to hold things for too long. Okay, I always go back to the story that one of my old mentors told me. Think about the market as a lion or a tiger in the room with you. How long do you want to be in that room for? You don't want to be in it very long. You want to get in and out, essentially. So even if when that comes to day, like swing trading, you know, you don't want to be holding this for months and things like that. You want to just be holding it for a few days, maybe a week, get out, look to reposition. You know, it's better to kind of walk away with something, right? I mean, we do have this little area down in here where price seems to be finding a little bit of support. That is the sort of point of control from, what day is that? That was Wednesday, the 15th of May. But I don't see that right now. And it's quite unusual circumstances right now. Usually the price of gold and the US dollar are negatively correlated. And we haven't really seen that at the moment. They're actually kind of following each other, which I find quite interesting at the moment. So obviously there's some outside circumstances working on gold at the minute. So any fundamentals or technical perspective on the weakness of the dollar today? It's coming down to the expectations of cuts, isn't it? That's what's usually kind of driving the market at the moment. And I think there is an expectation that the Fed were going to cut rates. Whether it's positioning to do the opposite right now, because it doesn't make sense to me why the dollar is so undervalued, because I don't really see them cutting rates. I mean, we had the FOMC meeting minutes, didn't we? And we saw out of that the Fed are still waiting for inflation to come a lot lower. So they're going to be leaving rates higher for longer. You know, what does that mean? You know, does that mean that the chance of cuts this year is going to be pushed back again? So I don't know whether we're just getting at the moment a sort of positioning ahead of them potentially not cutting rates, and you know that could then lead to some really strong bullishness in the US dollar. I mean, looking at it from this point of view right now, just from a higher time frame, we are still in a range. You know, we are still technically in a range, very much so. You know, we've got 107s in here. Market is holding this trend line support at the moment above the 50 MA on the weekly time frame, and we're just getting this sort of pullback in the market from those highs. You know, I still feel that 107 was going to be breached and we'd see dollar up at sort of 112s, 114s, because usually the markets move on the sort of differentials in interest rates, and you've got the Fed that are kind of holding. Everyone else is in a bit more of a position to move. You know, you got the likes of the Bank of England, for instance. They're looking at potentially cutting rates. You know, inflation rate fell to 2.3%. So that is closer to the 2% target than where the US is at. And, you know, a big problem in the US was the fact that a lot of people, when the interest rate was really low, a lot of people that owned homes remortgaged to lower interest rate terms for longer periods. So I think they had like 30, 50-year mortgages or something like that at a lower interest rate. So that has kind of helped people have more money in their pocket, even though inflation did rise. So there's still a considerable amount of spending in the US. People had considerable amounts of savings and things like that. So I still feel like the US dollar is still undervalued at the moment. Whether that changes soon, I don't know, but I've got to trade what's in front of me, and in front of me at the minute, we're just pushing lower. So I don't see that changing unless bond yields start rising again. If the US 10-year starts rising, then, you know, I feel that US dollar will be dragged back towards 107. But fundamentally, right now, I think it's a little bit skewed. I mean, we do have the flash manufacturing PMI, flash services PMI coming up in a little bit, but we'll probably see a move on that, you know, especially if we see anything below 50s. That would be fairly negative for the dollar. But bigger picture, you know, I'm talking bigger picture here, not necessarily the data drops that we've seen at the moment. You know, I think we've got to, I still think that the dollar is an undervalued currency. And then you've got stock markets absolutely raging higher. You know, let's go take a look at the Dow again. Although we've looks like we're coming off the highs here, doesn't it? This is a weekly chart of the Dow on the left-hand side. Go to a daily chart. Looks like we have started to come off these highs a little bit, the all-time highs compared to like the likes of the Nasdaq. But, you know, this rally has been off the back of, you know, the potential for the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates, pretty much. And then every time we get a hint that they're not going to do that, we see bearishness in the market, but it's then quickly just swallowed back up. Let's see, we'll just sit on the Dow here for a minute. Let me just take off the volume profile. We've got some data coming up in a minute, 30 seconds. Let's play a little game. Should we do higher or lower? What do we think the Dow's going to be? I'm going to leave it up to fate in the next minute. We'll do higher or lower on the Dow. Let's see if fate gets it right. So we got higher on the wheel of names, the wheel of fortune. If it does, I might have to start spinning a wheel for every currency pair that we have. But let me know in the chat what you think, higher or lower. Obviously, do not do this. This is not any advice to do this whatsoever. This is just a little bit of fun. Do not do this. Right, guy, yeah, go the wheel. Don't go the wheel. Let's see. 25 seconds. I want to see some more highs or lows in the chat. Yeah. Very good point. Very good point, Royston. But that's the whole fun of it, right? That's the whole fun of trading, I guess. You know, it's the unknown, isn't it? I think that's what always brings us back to the market. It's the unknown of what's going to happen. And you know, this is the side that I love about it. It's analyzing all the sort of fundamental aspects and then trying to identify, you know, the opportunities around that then. And then when you see that playing out, that's the rush of trading, really, isn't it? I should have put a little level on this. Let me go to the 5-minute chart. This was the data before the news, the level before the news. So at the moment, the Wheel of Fortune was saying higher. I say Wheel of Fortune, that's a game show, isn't it? The wheel was saying higher, and it looks like it's going lower right now. But we did get a report here. So let's have a look. So we got flash manufacturing PMIs coming at 50.9, was forecast to be 50. So that's shown a little bit of growth here on the manufacturing PMIs. And what did we get on the services PMI? Services PMI was pretty good, actually, 54.8 over 51.2. And we actually had a revision higher to 50.9 on the previous. So services PMI has actually gone up a fair little bit. I mean, we haven't seen 53, what was it, 50? Yeah, 54.8. We haven't seen that for a while. Highest level there was back in May of 2023. So again, is that showing further growth? Dollar strength from the announcement, Royston says. Let's go and have a quick flick over to the US dollar. Looks like the Dow went lower, so Wheel of Fortune got it wrong. Yeah, nice. That's a big pop in price, isn't it? On the US dollar. Wow. So maybe our theory of the dollar being undervalued is, you know, is there's an underlying theme here, isn't there? We're seeing growth in services PMIs, growth in manufacturing as well. And what does that mean? You know, you've got sort of industry expansion, basically, is what it's showing us. And it's showing good economic health. It's showing that, you know, businesses are doing well in the conditions that they're in at the minute. And you got to think, what is the conditions? Well, it's higher inflation, isn't it? Higher inflation, higher interest rates, and businesses are still doing particularly well. You know, what does that say? That says that the market is kind of coping at the moment. I mean, I'm not from the US, so I don't have an idea of what it's like ground level. If anyone is from the US in the stream, let me know. No worries, Royston. Have a great weekend. Safe trading to you too. Thank you for all the comments and questions today. I really appreciate that, and hope you have a good weekend. I mean, even CPI has been fairly sticky, hasn't it, in the US as well? And that is going to be something interesting. We do have new home sales as well coming up at 3 o'clock. So I think that one's going to be a very interesting thing to see. Are people buying homes in the US as well? You know, that may be a little bit lower. You would think because interest rates are higher, less people would be buying homes. But again, if that goes into consideration of higher, then what is that telling us? Is that people are coping with the higher interest rate, higher inflation rate. Maybe we'll get to a point where the 2% inflation story isn't going to be a thing anymore. You know, maybe they'll settle for sort of anywhere between 2 and 3%. But they left rates low for too long, didn't they? Essentially. When was the first rate hike? Let's have a look. When was the first rate hike in the US? 2023. We've seen a third. Fed raised 4 times in 2023. That was it. Yeah. When did it start? February 2023. And this is the graph of new home sales. right? So it kind of goes into the theory that I was talking about, where you have higher interest rates. So in theory, less people would be buying homes because they have to go with mortgages that are at the higher interest rates, right? And you can see there is a sort of steady decline in that if you look at the average, okay? Now we are starting to come back to the average. So this would be a good point. If we start to break above the average here, then again, is that a sign that the economy is coping really well? And then this is going to, again, go back to the theory of, are we going to see the Fed push back interest rate cuts again? The market was pricing, remember, the market was pricing in 3 to 4 cuts this year. That's gone down to 2. Then we've got a presidential election coming in November. You know, do the Fed really want to be seen cutting around November? You know, maybe not. So like I said, I do feel like the dollar is an undervalued currency at the moment. We're just seeing, obviously, the market do what the market does. It just moves back to key areas and whatnot. So maybe we'll watch, maybe breaks above 105 could be the first sign that the markets or the US dollar index or the US dollar is coming back to strength. VIX needs to start moving higher. You know, if we're going to see a move down in the stock markets, the VIX must move higher. And we're at sort of, again, those kind of record lows on the VIX right now. It has been lower in the past, so there is a chance of the VIX moving lower, sort of back in 2017, and that's going to help drive those stock prices as well. This is the volatility index of the S&P 500. Let's have a little look at how the Australian dollar's performed off of that. We've had a dip in the Australian dollar, dip in euro dollar as well. Starting to come back a little bit. Let's see how cable performed. Cable has been fairly resilient to the moves recently. You know, we've had a stronger US dollar, but pound US dollars continued to make bullish closes. So I'll be interested to see if we get a rebound here on cable, especially because it's come down into those swing lows there. We'll see if we get a bit of a rebound at that point. We just flick back the volume profile, kind of breaking into those lows there of yesterday. Let's see, did the Dow recover? Dow did not recover. Wheel of Fortune got it wrong. Right then, guys, I think I'm going to leave it there. Next week, we'll definitely talk about sort of how this has shaped up. Sorry, let me get it back in. How the sort of 50 MA currency strength meter is shaped up. You know, right now we've got sort of these currency pairs that were to be looked at. We did take a look at a few of those. We had a little look at pound yen, for instance. Where is pound yen? Which was fairly bullish. And look, even though price has come down, it's recovered quite quickly. Obviously, dollar yen is again sort of continuing to push to the upside here. So don't really seeing that kind of coming back anytime soon. I think 160 is still the play there. Aussie yen was another one that you could have potentially looked at as well. We're just having a bit of a pullback on Aussie yen right now, but we're coming back into this area of volume. So maybe we'll see a little bit of buying coming back in on Aussie yen. But yeah, I'll go through that next week. We'll have a little look to see how the changes were, if there were any changes, what those currency pairs look like. And then on Tuesday, we'll have to look to see if there's any kind of trading opportunities around those. So, right, I'm going to leave it there, guys. Thank you to everybody that joined in today. If you could leave the stream a like, I would really, really appreciate that. Thanks to everybody that sent in questions and commented and joined in. Had some good fun today doing some analysis, so thank you for that. I will catch you all next week, and yeah, safe trading. Hope the rest of your week goes really well, and yeah, catch you then. Cheers, guys.